Chapter 7, Ushkanuk and Grander Light. This memory embarks on the other side of your world, where oneness with the land and its people was once common knowledge. We speak now of a tribe that lived on the west coast of North America. This story has turned into a myth of the long-forgotten journey of a boy named Ushkanuk. Ushkanuk lived within his small village along the ocean and had a happy life of gathering shellfish, going fishing with his grandfather, and collecting berries with the women in the summer months. Stories were passed down from generation to generation in the longhouse around the fire through their many feast celebrations. Ushkanuk's story begins when he was about to paddle off in the hand-carved canoe of his father. Ushkanuk's father was the chief and was respected throughout their community. Their canoe had been passed down through the family and patched up time and time again over the years to maintain the life of their canoe. Ushkanuk was going to paddle with his father to a secluded island where he would then be on his own for 7 days and 7 nights. This was an initiation for each boy in their culture. On this sacred island, every boy at some point would have a vision of their role in manhood. As they set off, it was the tradition for the entire village to say goodbye to each boy that would go with the chief to the island. For Ushkanuk, it was an exciting time to be on his own, to show the others what he had learned with fire, gathering food, and respecting the land around him that took care of his needs. He hugged his mother and grandparents and waved goodbye to all those that had come to see Ushkanuk depart. Ushkanuk and his father began paddling and started the long journey ahead of them. It was a quiet morning with mist in the air that hovered above the waters, and the sun was beginning to peek through the clouds. Ushkanuk was 12 years old and ready for an adventure. It was a 6-hour journey by canoe, and just when Ushkanuk didn't think he could canoe any longer, he began to see the island in sight. He had blisters on both of his hands and was not going to complain to his father. The canoe landed on shore, and they got out to stretch their legs. Each boy is given a small amount of dried fish, water, and a blanket to keep warm. Ushkanuk's father embraced him and said, "Ushkanuk, I will be back on the 8th day to pick you up. Stay strong and be open to the knowledge and experiences that will come forward. You have the Anuksha blood in you, and there will be many beings that will come forward." He grabbed the bow of the canoe and stepped in as it glided back into the water. He smiled and waved once more to Ushkanuk, and just like that, was on his way. Ushkanuk scanned the beach and took in his surroundings. There were large trees up ahead, and he knew he wanted to set up his home for the week near the waters, but not in the way of any animals that would come by. There was a small glade nearby at the base of a large cedar tree that he took a liking to and left his blanket there. Ushkanuk immediately began looking for firewood and gathered quite a collection to help him keep warm for the first night. He also found a large batch of blueberry bushes and couldn't believe how easy everything seemed. He had food, he was going to start a fire, and this week would be a breeze. Little did Ushkanuk know that at the base of the cedar tree was a portal. There are many portals on your planet and throughout the galaxies and universes. This portal accessed other beings and animals that would come through Ushkanuk's dream time to take him on a journey of awakening his senses of the mind, body, and soul. Ushkanuk was proud of himself after he started his fire. The fire was everything for survival. He had found some plantain leaves and elderberries and began crushing the plantain leaves up to create a salve for the blister wounds on his hands. He knew the elderberries would help him replenish any lost energy from the long canoe ride earlier that day. Now, as night was upon him, he took his blanket and covered himself up. The fire was lulling him to sleep, and he soon drifted off into a deep sleep. Ushkanak woke up several hours later, startled. His fire was out, and he heard voices that were coming closer and closer to where he was sleeping. Ushkanak gathered his blanket and sat in a crouched position. Two large men, no wait, two large animals that spoke like men came out of the forest. They came into the glade and smiled when they saw Ushkanak. "There you are, Ushkanak. We have been waiting many nights for you to come and join us." Ushkanak sat in open disbelief. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he was imagining the whole thing. What was going on? Ushkanak shouted back, "You're not real, and I wish you away. I do not want you here. Please, leave me in peace." Ushkanak lowered his gaze and began to address the night sky in his mind, asking for help to wake up and be rid of this dream. The two large animals, one a stag deer of great size, and the other a black horse with wings, stepped forward. "Ushkanak, we mean you no harm. We are here for your initiation. We are here to take you deep into the portal of goodwill. And there you will go through a series of tests that will awaken you to your true self. Please, let us begin. There is no time to waste. Make haste, little one, for the night is still young." Ushkanak couldn't believe his eyes. They were still here. These massive animals were continuing to talk to him. Why wasn't he waking up? He decided the only way for him to break out of this dream or reality was to go along with them and pretend to play the role for their sake. He knew he would eventually wake up, laugh, and tell the story to his family one day. Ushkanak stood up, folded up his blanket, and left it at the base of the tree. He walked up to the great stag and winged horse and said, "Hello, greetings. Where would you like to take me again?" The animals both laughed because they knew what Ushkanak was doing. Harold, the black-winged horse, lowered down on his two front legs as the stag Orion asked Ushkanak to climb up onto the horse. Orion spoke to Ushkanak, "We will move at great speed, and I ask that you hang on at all times to Harold's mane. We will stop at a bridge shortly, and that is where we will say goodbye and depart from you." Ushkanak looked a bit bewildered, but went with what he was told and climbed onto Harold's back. He took hold of Harold's mane, and away they went at lightning speed, crashing through the forest, the trees blurring by his side. Ushkanak lowered his head into Harold's mane as the wind was stinging his eyes. The two large animals started to slow down their pace as they began to trot towards a bridge that was lit up before them. Harold lowered his legs once more, this time for Ushkanak to slide down his large body. Both the stag and winged horse bowed down to Ushkanak and slipped into the dense forest. Ushkanak looked at the bridge, and there, sitting on top of the railing, was a large owl. The owl looked at Ushkanak and, in his mind, told him to follow him. Ushkanak continued to believe this was not his current reality, for he had heard stories from the elders of magical and mystical experiences happening on the island, but as he got older, his peers began to make fun of him for believing in such things. He followed the owl at a steady pace through a path that led deeper and deeper into the island. This island that opened this portal was to a sacred realm, one where magic and wonder came alive. Animals spoke, and you could feel the blessed energy in everything. As Ushkanak kept up with the owl, he could feel a change in the air. He began to notice twinkling, glittering lights in the trees, and more birds came to sit in the trees, awaiting Ushkanak's arrival. The owl landed in front of a large, enormous oak tree and called out by hooting 3 times. Hoo-hoo! 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 A doorway appeared at the base of the tree and opened up to a room with golden light. The owl bowed down to Ushkanak and spoke to him in his mind. It's time for you to go in, Ushkanak. I bid you farewell. The owl took to the night sky, and Ushkanak could feel many eyes upon him as they eagerly awaited for Ushkanak to step forward. Ushkanak had set the intention earlier when he was with his father that he wanted an adventure, but he had no idea this would be it. Ushkanak stepped forward into the doorway of golden light and was astonished to see a small library and a chair in one corner of the room, a tiny kitchen, and an open fire with a pot of something delicious cooking on top. The door closed behind him, and a great wizard stepped forward. This man had golden robes on, with light symbols that would move in the glowing fabric. He asked Ushkanak to take a seat in the library chair as he stirred the pot of soup over the fire. He told Ushkanak that he was to take him to a land far from here. They were in the in-between world, between Earth and where they needed to go. His name was Granderlight, and he told Ushkanak that once they were where they needed to be, he would go through a series of tests. Once he finished his tasks at hand, he would be back in the glade where his blanket was, to then await his father and go home. Ushkanak was beginning to realize this wasn't a dream. He could feel his body. All of his senses were working, and there was no denying the grumbling from his belly when he started to smell the soup. Granderlight poured a bowl for Ushkanak and himself and said, "Once we finish this soup, we will shrink down to an incredibly small size that will allow us to travel in the roots of this great tree. These roots are light pathways, advanced light tunnels that can move us at great speeds, as fast as the speed of light, from one destination to another. The first world you are going to is a planet where no soul can live. It is covered in volcanic rock. Lava flows on top of it, and lightning is continually striking the surface. Each realm that you go to is a teaching world. The goal, Ushkanak, for your first task is to find the way inside the planet. Once inside, you will find a grand crystal of great healing ability that has helped millions and millions of souls throughout the galaxies." Just as Ushkanak looked down at his bowl of soup to see if he had any more left, it was empty. Granderlight and Ushkanak began shrinking down at incredible speed and turned into 2 small balls of glowing lights. The sensation was fascinating to Ushkanak, for he felt strange in his body as they were shrinking. But as they moved into their glowing lights, he felt such peace and love at his core, in his cells, in every part of him. He wanted to remain like this forever. Granderlight's light went to the library floor and slipped down through the side of the floorboards. Ushkanak followed, not quite understanding where Granderlight went. But as Ushkanak got closer to the floor, he could see there was an opening that led down to the oak tree's roots. As Ushkanak followed, it opened up to another world. A web of enormous light lay before him, and there were droplets of light that were moving through these strands in the web. These were souls that were traveling from place to place, world to world, universe to universe. Even though all the lights in the web seemed similar, Ushkanak knew Grander Light's light anywhere. He intuitively knew which light was his. They traveled at great speed through this web of light, and then Grander Light weaved off to the side, his light becoming brighter and bigger. Grander Light took the form of a golden orb and continued communicating to Ushkanak. Ushkanak, we are coming to the end of this route. This is where I leave you, for you will be catapulted through time and space to the world that I spoke of. You will be in human form with a suit that will cover your body to protect you from the elements. Remember, the one task at hand is to find the way inside the planet and to venture through until you see the grand crystal. Time does not exist here like on your planet. There can be a cycle of confusion in the mind that may interfere. Find your strength and continue on when you get discouraged. Have faith in yourself. This will help you find the way in. With these last words from Grander Light, Ushkanak was thrown at great speed through a kaleidoscope of light. He was in awe of the colors that were spinning around him and wasn't able to think of anything else due to the intensity of the speed he was traveling at. At once, Ushkanak's light stopped, and he slowly hovered above a planet that looked unlivable, uninhabitable, and terrifying to Ushkanak. He wanted to turn back and be with Grander Light, drinking soup. Why did he have to do this? Then Grander Light's voice popped into his mind. Ushkanak, this is the initiation your family has gone through from generation to generation. Every task is different for each soul. Yours is finding your true self, no matter the cost. Ushkanak could feel the energy pulling him as he was getting closer and closer to this harsh planet. He felt his light grow, and he became human once again. A suit of light fabric wrapped over his body with a small, clear, bubble-like helmet, covering his face. Ushkanak had never seen clothing or material like this on Earth. All of the information he was receiving and the experiences he was going through would have been overwhelming in his mind if he was able to think for a moment, but there was no time. His spacesuit body began to float down through the planet's atmosphere until his feet touched the jagged lava rock. Ushkanak took in his surroundings. Lava was running as far as the eye could see, as lightning flashed across the plains. Ushkanak had no idea how he would get inside this planet. He put his fears aside as lightning continued to strike the plains overhead and the lava flowed only meters away from him. With one careful step at a time, Ushkanak moved over the rocks and watched the landscape. At first glance, he saw destruction. No life, no possibility. When your last home was on Earth, a planet filled with life, beauty, and promise, and then to come to this was the exact opposite of Earth. As Ushkanak continued to walk, he had an epiphany. How were planets created? How did they start? He realized he was on the beginning of a new planet. Yes, it would take millions of years to get to the beginning stages of life on a planet being seeded. But he knew this was one of the stages, and he was lucky enough to witness this incredible event. And just like that, a door opened on the side of one of the lava mountains of rocks, and Ushkanak did not hesitate to go in. He stepped into a passageway where the walls were hardened lava rock, and slowly the tunnel walls turned into brownish earth tones, and he could see a dim light up ahead. Ushkanak started to run, joy filling his heart. He knew he was going to complete his first task. The soft glow got brighter and brighter, and Ushkanak soon found out where the source of light was coming from. He entered a room of earth walls that had multiple colored layers of browns, reds, and oranges. There in the middle of this room was the great, grand crystal. This crystal was at least 20 feet tall and 10 feet wide, with smaller clusters of crystals at its base. It was clear quartz at the top and with a milky opaque color at the bottom. Ushkanak could feel the energy pulsating from this crystal through the room and beyond. Ushkanak wanted to touch the crystal, and he felt his body walk toward the crystal. Ushkanak's mouth was wide open, as he couldn't have even imagined such a thing. As soon as Ushkanak reached out and touched the crystal, there was a blast of light, and he instantly shot out of that world, back in front of Grander Light, as a ball of light among the web roots of the oak tree. Grander Light spoke inside of Ushkanak's mind. Well done, Ushkanak. You set your doubts and fears aside within your mind and saw the potential with what was before you. In doing so, you opened the door and saw a great gift indeed, the grand crystal that has healed many. We continue on to your next task. Stay close as we have a ways to go. And with that, Grander Light decreased in size from his light orb state to a smaller bright light and began to travel with other lights along the roots of the ancient oak tree. There were thousands upon thousands of roots from this oak tree, which then formulated into a gigantic web of light. Each strand that connected to the web was a magnificent highway of sparkling lights. Grander Light continued weaving his way through the other lights. Ushkanak did not doubt that Grander Light had traveled this way many times before. Grander Light traveled to the center of this vibrating, pulsating web and disappeared right inside. Ushkanak was in awe for 1 millisecond, and with all of his might, followed Grander Light through the center. Inside the center were many galaxies. This was another doorway into another universe. Grander Light was asking Ushkanak to keep up just as Grander Light began to slow down his pace in front of one particular galaxy that radiated blue lights down below. Grander Light explained each cluster of blue lights represents a series of planets that unite together. Grander Light said, families travel from one planet to another, and there is great fluidity between these civilizations. Ushkanak, you will enter one of these planets and will experience a different body than your light or human body. This body of blue will lengthen in a few moments, and you will have no clothing covering the body. Your senses will be quite different than on Earth, for there is no ego here. Your sense of equilibrium may be off as well, but know that you will adjust within a few hours. The task at hand is one of opening the mind, communicating, and observing the species to gather information to help your kind back home. In a few days' time, I will pull you out of this planet and ask you 3 questions. If you succeed with the answers, we move on to your 3rd and final task. Ushkanak didn't even have time to ask what would happen if he didn't get the answers right, because his body was transforming right before his eyes. He could feel Grandeur Light watch over him as he transitioned into his new body. Once his transformation was complete, a clear pod surrounded Ushkanak and began to lower him down to the planet. Ushkanak couldn't believe how long his body was. He was at least 7 feet tall. He observed his hands, arms, legs, and feet. His entire body was blue, and his skin was thicker than when he was human. The pod landed and opened as Ushkanak stepped outside. This planet looked a bit like Earth in terms of the green grassy hills that were in front of him, but he would soon find out how truly different it was. For starters, the sky was the color of intense pinks and purples that moved with the flow of the energy waves on the planet. He could stay all day long just looking at the sky. As he began to look around, there were trees, green vegetation, and space. It looked a bit similar to his home, but where he lived, there was a dense forest, and the sea was next to their village. In this world, he immediately felt safe. There were no worries about being cold, the threats of animals, or hunger. Ushkanak began to walk up the hill toward a large opening between 2 gigantic trees. He felt drawn to see what was beyond. What Ushkanak did not know was that this was the gateway to the city. When he walked between these 2 enormous trees, he walked through a shimmering wall of light. This opened up to a magnificent city before his eyes. There were buildings and flying vehicles, and all the beings looked like the body that he was in. They were blue and very tall. Ushkanak did take notice of some smaller beings and knew these were their children. He ventured down the hill into the city and became aware that their language was a mixture of speaking and telepathy. One did not have to speak with their mouths if one chose not to. Ushkanak walked the streets of the city. There were moving walkways, and some shops hovered above the actual street itself. These beings would float or gravitate upwards and move into the shop. Ushkanak went up to one being and asked where he was. And this being looked into Ushkanak's eyes and laughed with the kindest of eyes and smiles. Ushkanak couldn't help but smile too. "Dear one, you are not from here, I see. You were on the planet of grace, community, and freedom. We call ourselves the beings of all-knowing, which of course is with tongue in cheek. We love to laugh and be of good nature. Enjoy your time here, for it will truly change your awareness." Ushkanak thanked the being, but didn't quite know what he meant by his awareness being changed. And as soon as Ushkanak had that thought, he began to laugh. He couldn't help it. There was a lightness in being here, a happiness that he didn't know existed. Ushkanak was smiling again and watched how these beings interacted with one another. He went to a small park that he found in the middle of the city. From this vantage point, he had a 360-degree view. In this park, there were beautiful trees that swayed gently in the soft breeze. Ushkanak noticed as the trees moved in the wind, this caused the leaves to rustle their leaves with the quietest and most relaxing sounds. This is the park of tranquility, a voice said in his mind. Someone was speaking to Ushkanak using telepathy. He looked up and saw a being watching him, and he knew this being was female. She looked just like the other beings. She was tall and blue, but it was her features that were softer, and you knew intuitively she was female. She was sitting on a long chase that hovered above the ground. As he walked toward her, she said, "Greetings, little one. I did not mean to intrude on your peaceful moment. I thought I may be of some assistance to you." Ushkanak smiled. "Greetings. My name is Ushkanak, and I would very much appreciate your assistance. Thank you." "It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Ushkanak. We do not have names on this planet. We come from a long line of beings that have overcome a great many things. Now we live here in peace, laughter, and acceptance of all that is. We have created a series of planets to enjoy and for others to see the way we live, to show others that a species can be happy and love each other without the need for polarity. This is our choice at this time." Ushkanak asked this female being, "Are you happy?" She answered, "Very much so. With what we have been through, we craved peace. Now that we have it, we enjoy each moment as if it is our last. We continue to create planets and worlds with this idea of love and peace for all. Laughter, we have discovered, is one of the best antidotes to ill health, along with letting go of expectations and control. When moving with the flow of all that is, there is a knowing that you will be looked after. A greater peace surrounds the soul, and one can't help but appreciate all the lessons and hardships they went through to get here." This incredible wisdom that has been shared with Ushkanak would change him forever. He felt he was sheltered in his village after seeing these incredible worlds, and yet he knew that living in his village on Earth provided him with great gifts for his soul. Ushkanak thanked this female for her insight and wisdom of knowledge, and asked if there was anything else that she'd like to share with him before he departed. "Each life is very short, Ushkanak. Whether one lives until they are 8, 82, 300, or live for thousands of years, there is no death to the soul. You are eternal and will experience a great many things in the years to come. On this planet, we have achieved happiness, laughter, and love each and every day. We do not take this for granted. We are a humble, grateful species who sees the bigger picture along with source of all that is. Through your experiences, know you are never alone. Laugh until it hurts, and love. Love with every fiber of your being. This will change your world and the worlds you will visit and live on in your future." Ushkanak was crying. He felt immense love for this female being. She stood from her long chase chair and embraced Ushkanak, whispering in his ear, "I think someone is waiting for you." With a flash of light, Ushkanak was pulled back into the sky until he was hovering in space overlooking this blue cluster of lights, with Grander Light by his side. Grander Light spoke to Ushkanak. "It has been 3 days that have passed, Ushkanak." Ushkanak didn't understand. He knew time was different on this planet, but was taken aback as it felt like only a few hours had passed since he landed. Grander Light got right down to business. The first question, Ushkanuk, is what is the purpose of this species? Ushkanuk knew the answer right away. To show others that love and light can lead the way. There is no need for polarity, and yet there is no right or wrong with this either. Grander Light responded to Ushkanuk, correct. Very good, Ushkanuk. Second question. What did you learn from the female being you spoke to? Ushkanuk wasn't surprised that Grander Light was watching him on the planet and thought for a moment, for he had learned so much from her. I learned that we are all eternal, but much deeper than that. We each have a choice on how we look at what we are dealt with in each lifetime and each experience that we have. Again, there is no judgment if you look through the eyes of hatred or fear, but it will be much easier and helpful if you look through the eyes of love and acceptance for all. Yes, Ushkanuk, Grander Light said. Well done. That is exactly right. Third and last question. Will you tell others about this world when you get back to your life on Earth? Ushkanuk thought for a moment and could see before his eyes that yes, he had a choice to tell others or to keep his stories hidden and all to himself. He knew in his heart this was why he was here, to show himself and to be his true self. Ushkanuk's authentic self was to go against the grain and not care what others think anymore. He also knew he could wait and tell his stories years later if he wished. Again, there was no right or wrong. Ushkanuk knew he didn't want to hold back and wanted to tell his experiences with his family and village sooner rather than later. He was proud of what he had learned and wanted to share what was in his heart. Yes, Grander Light, I will share my experiences and speak of this world. For it is through hope that this species shows us there is another way. Yes, Ushkanuk, they certainly do. Grander Light began to shine a bit brighter, and Ushkanuk started to move back into a ball of light once more. Once their light transformation was complete, they went back through the opening into the web, back amongst the light roots of the tree. Ushkanuk was wondering what his third and final task would be as he followed Grander Light back up the roots, back into the floor opening of Grander Light's library. A shimmering of light began to expand in the room, and Ushkanuk could feel his light expand and change as he moved back into human form. Grander Light was already in his wizard form and handed Ushkanuk a cup to drink from. Drink this, Ushkanuk. It will make your adjustment back into this form much easier. For as Grander Light began to speak, he could feel his mind reeling and his physical vessel was off balance. Ushkanuk also felt dizzy and slightly nauseous. Once Ushkanuk had finished his drink, he felt calmer and more stable. Grander Light said, "Let us take a walk. It will be good to get grounded and feel the warm air on our skin." And with that, the door opened, and the two of them walked out into the night sky. Ushkanuk wondered if there ever was daylight here. Yes, Ushkanuk, this realm is like Earth in the way that there is night and day. We have seasons, and we tend to all life here. However, time does not exist here the same way it does on your planet. They walked down a path that was lit by lightning bugs and the golden lights of the fairies. Ushkanuk could see many owls' eyes looking back at him as they continued on their walk. Ushkanuk, you and I are now linked through your experiences. I will be the voice of reason when you are back in your village. I will be here for you, always. Ushkanak felt deep emotion rise in his heart. This meant the world to Ushkanak. He did not want to lose Granderlight from his life, for he had become much more than a guide and teacher over these past few days. He was a wise soul he looked up to, and was very happy to hear this from Granderlight. Ushkanak, your next task will take place on Earth. You will observe your family and village, and they will not be able to see you. You are to observe the way of your village and how they interact with each other and the land. This will go on for a day, and then you will fast forward to 1,000 years from now. You will observe how all humans treat each other and their land. This will be for one more day, until I pull you back and we meet again in the library. I will ask you a question in the library, and if that question is adequately answered, you will be back in the glade awaiting your father's return. Ushkanak understood, and with a flash of light, Ushkanak could feel himself floating towards his family that were sleeping in their hut. Dawn was rising, and he could feel the stirrings of the village. He liked the state that he was in. He felt like he was a ghost. He could move between huts and people without being noticed. If he thought of one place in particular, like the beach where he would collect shellfish, he would be there instantaneously. Ushkanak hovered on the ground of his family's hut and began to watch his parents. There was love and morning hugs for one another. They began to heat the water and placed bannock over their fire. Once Ushkanak's father, the chief, had eaten and said goodbye to Ushkanak's mother, he stepped out of the hut and Ushkanak followed him. Ushkanak could read his father's mind. There had been a recent discourse between a husband and wife, and his father was to check on them at first sunrise. To Ushkanak's surprise, this was his friend's home, and Ushkanak was not aware of his friend's family having any problems. Ushkanak followed his father to his friend's hut, and once inside was shocked to see his friend's mother lying on the ground, bruises all over her body, as her two children tended to her. Their father was passed out on the bed. The chief was furious. He had advised his friend to get his temper under control. There would be consequences if he ever hit his wife again or spoke belligerently to her. He had already given his friend a warning that if he continued, he would be banished from the village and placed in the healer's care until the root of the issue was resolved, no matter how long it took. The chief knew this had a ripple effect, especially when children were involved. There was already much healing to be done at this stage. Ushkanak felt heartsick for his friend, his little sister, and his friend's mother, even their father. What happened to the father in the past that he would do this to another and someone that he loved? Ushkanak left his father so his father could tend to the situation. Ushkanak walked into the forest. Some women had begun to pick berries and had left some for the animals and birds. There was a new way of being here, an awareness of the other creatures that also needed food. The women only took what was needed, no more. The women began to sing softly and moved over to a cedar tree, asking to take a few of its boughs for basket weaving. Ushkanak could see the tree shimmer in response, and the women thanked the tree and began to take a few branches. They sat under the tree and continued to sing. The tree enjoyed the song and was happy for providing the women with what they needed. The day quickly turned into night, and Ushkanak was instantly pulled from his village. Ushkanak was excited to see 1,000 years play out before his eyes. However, he was not prepared for what he was about to witness. Lands were destroyed for cities, Forests were wiped out, and there were gigantic holes in the earth made by humans that were gutting her and taking her resources. Oceans were filled with debris and garbage. Everything was suffocating. The animals, the planet, and even the humans. When this vision was completed, Ushkanak's ghost-like body was pulled into a city where people were sleeping on the streets. Some were begging for food and money. They were unkept, dirty, and desperately needed to be helped. Ushkanak's heart broke again as he watched endless amounts of people walking by these souls. These people were completely unaffected by such a sight. It was as if they were sleepwalking. If anyone in his village needed help, they were there for them. This was non-negotiable. Everyone in the village was your family, whether they were blood-related or not. Ushkanak's energy was then taken to a neighborhood where it looked like the humans had everything. The people were clean, had glitter jewels on, and wore new clothing. They had shiny rides with wheels and the biggest huts Ushkanak had ever seen. He witnessed some of the parents being too busy for their children as they talked on devices. Ushkanak could feel the isolation some of these children experienced. The children didn't want all of these things that were placed before them. They wanted time with their moms and dads. There was such an imbalance with all the visions that Ushkanak saw. He felt sick to his stomach. He saw the illusion, the hamster wheel humanity was on. He didn't want to be here anymore. It was too much. He wanted to go home. And just like that, he was back in Grander Light's library, crying heartfelt tears at all that he had witnessed and felt. Grander Light kneeled in front of Ushkanak, hugging him and advising him to breathe gently. Ushkanak felt at home here with Grander Light, back in this safe space. After some time passed, Grander Light tilted Ushkanak's gaze towards his own and asked, "Ushkanak, I know this was hard for you to see. This was only a piece of what will occur in the future on your planet. How do you think your world can change by seeing these visions of what will be?" Ushkanak knew it was up to each soul. Each soul can look at their circumstances and overcome one's hardships and heartbreaks. The ingredients for change and to break the chains of illusion are to provide the soul with enough time, nurturement, and love to face the soul's fears head on. Ushkanak knew that the land he lives on, that all humans live on, is sacred and is not to be taken for granted. Ushkanak knew that all humans must take care of the earth, together as a species. For we are just passing by and need to take care of her, just as we would with our loved ones. Ushkanak knew when one person breaks the cycle of a violent or abusive past, this is change. When one follows their own heart calling, no matter what others think, this is change. When one stands up for what is right, uses their voice, and makes a stand, this is change. When humanity moves through the illusion with intention, a kind heart, and compassion for oneself and others, this is change. Ushkanak, you have completed your third and final task, Grander Light said. Ushkanak couldn't believe his ears. He was so involved in his own thoughts with Grander Light's question that he didn't realize Grander Light was reading his mind. Ushkanak, you have accomplished what many have not done. But you know you have the Nuksha blood in you, Grander Light said, winking. Ushkanak threw his arms around a smiling and laughing Granderlight. Ushkanak didn't want to let him go. He wanted to see Granderlight again. And with that thought, Granderlight responded, Ushkanak, I will see you in your dreams, where we will have many more adventures together and stories that you can share with your village when you become chief. Our connection will never be lost, for your heart and soul have awoken. You are now a sage of knowledge, wisdom, and truth. Enjoy your years ahead on Earth, Ushkanak, for your next life will be in the last vision you saw. You will be a teacher where humanity will need you and many others like you. They embraced once more, and Granderlight walked Ushkanak back to the lit bridge where Harold and Orion were waiting. Harold bent his 2 front legs down, and Ushkanak climbed up the magnificent winged horse. Harold and Orion bowed down to Granderlight, and Granderlight bowed down to his 2 friends. Harold asked Ushkanak through his mind to hold on to his mane tightly as he neighed and went on his 2 back legs and set off in a fast-paced run. Ushkanak buried his head in Harold's mane, sobbing as he departed from Granderlight. He didn't even get to say goodbye. And just like that, Granderlight popped into his head. This is not goodbye, Ushkanak. This is just the beginning. And with a warm-hearted chuckle, disappeared from Ushkanak's mind. Ushkanak then felt a warm embrace of light surround him from Granderlight, the female blue beam, and the great crystal. He felt the web and the tree of life energy move through his body, this energy buzzing in his veins, and he felt at peace once more. His heart was full, and he felt empowered and wise beyond his 12 years. Orion was still at the bridge with Granderlight and asked, will this experience of Ushkanak's help change the world of Earth? Granderlight lifted his gaze towards the night sky and said, one seedling at a time, Orion. One seedling at a time. With that, Orion took off to catch up to Harold and Ushkanak. Before Ushkanak knew it, they were back at the glade. It was the morning of the 8th day. Harold lowered Ushkanak down, and Ushkanak reached up to hug Harold, and then walked over to Orion and hugged him too. The 2 beautiful creatures bowed down to Ushkanak and smiled. It was an honor to make your acquaintance, Ushkanak, said Orion. We bid you a farewell, dear heart. And with that, Harold and Orion turned and trotted back into the forest. Ushkanak found his blanket and decided to wait for his father on the beach, where he started his journey 8 days ago. His mind was reeling with his experiences and what he knew. Ushkanak needed time to be and adjust. A few hours later, Ushkanak could see his father coming toward him, gliding in the water with their canoe. Ushkanak, how was your time, my son? How did you fare? Ushkanak helped pull the canoe in and gave his father a hand as he stepped onto shore. His father bent down and hugged Ushkanak. Ushkanak wasn't quite ready to share his experiences with anyone just yet, even his father. He simply looked into his father's eyes with tears, filling to the surface, and his father knew that Ushkanak had been on a journey that many have not ventured. It would take many years later for the chief's son to integrate with his otherworldly experiences. The chief would be there for Ushkanak during this process and share his own stories that he had gone through when his son was ready. The chief would also teach Ushkanak grounding ways to connect with the land after such an expansive awakening. After their embrace, Ushkanak and his father gathered some fresh berries and went back to the canoe to start their long journey back home. Once in the canoe, Ushkanak looked over his shoulder and could see Orion and Harold rearing on their back legs, saying goodbye. Ushkanak waved goodbye with his oar high in the air, his father asking what he was doing. "I'm saying goodbye to my friends, Father." When Ushkanak's father looked back, all he could see were two shimmering lights on the shore. This tale of truth is to show humanity the depth of experiences in the worlds and beings that are all around you. This will become available to each one of you as you awaken and your world moves into a higher frequency and dimension. This truth is also to awaken the ones that are lost or sleeping. For the newly awakened, this is to show you the illusion that has been laid upon your planet, and for you to shift into your power now, rising from the ashes. As each soul awakens and does the internal work, new ideas will forge and merge with the collective on how to heal your planet and your species as a whole.